You don't need more discipline to build better habits. You need to make your brain start wanting the behavior before you have to force yourself to do it. In this video, we're going to look at how dopamine, reward prediction, environmental cues, and habit learning can be used to make behaviors like exercising, reading, studying, saving money, or doing focused work increasingly automatic and rewarding. And there's one subtle change to the reward loop that most habit advice completely misses. Think about something you already do without negotiating with yourself. Maybe you make coffee in the morning. You don't wake up and have a meeting with yourself about whether you're disciplined enough to make coffee. You just do it. Now compare that with something you genuinely want to do more often. Exercise, reading, going to bed on time, working on an important project, practicing a skill, saving money instead of spending it. You can know exactly what you should do, genuinely want the result, and still find yourself sitting on the couch thinking, I'll do it in a few minutes. And then somehow those few minutes become an hour. Here's the interesting part. What if you stopped trying to force the habit and started training your brain to expect it? That's what I mean by getting addicted to good habits. And I'm using the word addicted deliberately, but not literally. Clinical addiction is a serious condition. What we're actually trying to create is a much healthier thing, a learned motivational pull toward behaviors that improve your life. The difference matters, because once you understand what your brain is actually learning from repeated behavior, you can stop treating every habit like a test of willpower. And the first thing we need to fix is one of the biggest misunderstandings about dopamine. Dopamine isn't the pleasure chemical. You've probably heard some version of this. Dopamine makes you feel good. That's an oversimplification. Dopamine is involved in several processes, including motivation, learning, and how the brain responds to rewards and reward-predicting cues. Research by neuroscientist Wolfram Schultz helped establish the importance of dopamine signals related to reward prediction errors, the difference between what the brain expects and what actually happens. And there's an even more useful distinction. Researchers Kent Berridge and Terry Robinson at the University of Michigan have spent decades separating liking from wanting. You can like something without strongly wanting it, and you can strongly want something without actually enjoying it that much. That's one reason dopamine is a poor synonym for pleasure. Dopamine-related systems are particularly important for motivational wanting and the way reward cues can pull your attention and behavior. Think about your phone. Sometimes you don't even want to see anything specific. You just reach for it. The notification sound, the phone sitting beside you, the feeling of boredom, these can become cues associated with something rewarding. Eventually, the cue itself can create the urge. And that's where our strategy begins. Because if your brain can learn to want something you didn't consciously decide to want, it can also learn to approach something you deliberately chose. Your brain is learning what to repeat. Imagine two behaviors. The first is scrolling through your phone. You tap. Immediately something happens. A new video, a message, a funny post, a surprising headline, another video. The feedback is fast. Now, compare that with reading a book. You read a page. Nothing dramatic happens. Another page. Another page. You might learn something interesting, but the payoff is often delayed. Or consider saving money. You transfer $200 into your savings account. Nothing exciting happens. Your future self benefits, but your present brain doesn't get a spectacular reward. This creates an interesting competition. Your brain is constantly learning which behaviors reliably produce meaningful outcomes. Habits form partly because behaviors repeated in recurring contexts become increasingly automatic. Wendy Wood and Dennis Runger describe habits as learned responses that develop through repetition in stable contexts and can become efficient default responses. So the problem isn't necessarily that your brain doesn't like good habits. The problem is that many good habits have terrible feedback loops. You ask yourself to do something today because you hope it will make your life better months from now. Meanwhile, another behavior can give your brain something interesting in 3 seconds. So let's change the game. Stop rewarding the finish line. Here's the first unusual shift. Most people try to motivate a good habit by focusing on the final reward. Exercise so you can lose weight. Study so you can get the grade. Work so you can make more money. Save so you can retire comfortably. Those outcomes matter, but they're too far away to reliably pull you through an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Instead, you need to give your brain something to notice during the process. Let's say you want to start walking every evening. Don't make the entire reward getting healthier. That's too abstract. Create something your brain can experience now. Maybe you only listen to your favorite podcast while walking. Maybe you take the walk somewhere you genuinely enjoy. Maybe you finish by getting your favorite coffee or tea. The point isn't to bribe yourself forever. The point is to create a stronger association. Walking leads to something I look forward to. You're giving the behavior an immediate, predictable piece of value. And there's an important distinction here. You're not trying to make the reward bigger than the habit. You're trying to make the habit feel like it leads somewhere good. That brings us to something even more powerful. Build anticipation before the habit. Think about a restaurant you love. You might start feeling excited before the food arrives. Nothing has happened yet. You're looking at the menu. You smell the food. You recognize the place. The anticipation has already started. Reward-predicting cues can influence motivation because learned cues can acquire motivational significance through their association with rewards. You can use the same principle with healthy behaviors. Create a small ritual that happens immediately before the behavior. Maybe it's the same coffee before deep work. Maybe it's a particular playlist before cleaning. Maybe it's putting your phone in another room and turning on the same desk lamp before reading. Maybe it's taking your shoes out the night before because seeing them in the morning means this is when I walk. You're creating a chain. Cue, anticipation, action. And eventually, the cue can start doing some of the motivational work that you previously expected willpower to do. That's a completely different approach to habit building. You're not constantly asking, do I feel motivated? You're designing the environment so the question becomes less important. Make progress visible before results exist. Here's another problem with good habits. The results are often invisible for a long time. You can exercise for 2 weeks and still look basically the same. You can read for a month and still feel like you haven't become dramatically smarter. You can save money for months and still not feel rich. You can practice a skill every day and still notice every mistake. Your brain doesn't automatically experience future progress as present progress. So give it evidence. Not a giant spreadsheet, not 20 productivity apps, just something visible. If you're reading, write down the number of pages you've completed. If you're walking, record your total distance. If you're learning a skill, save examples of your work from week 1, week 4, and week 8. If you're saving money, watch the account balance move. The purpose isn't to obsess over numbers. It's to make progress detectable. Because when the brain repeatedly sees, I did something leads to something changed, the behavior has a clearer consequence. And this is where a lot of habit advice gets backwards. People tell you to focus on the person you'll become. That's useful, but sometimes you also need to show your brain who you're becoming right now. Reward the evidence, not just the outcome. Let's take this one step further. After completing your habit, don't immediately move on. Give yourself a few seconds to register what happened. You finished the workout. Don't just think, okay, done. Think, I said I would do it, and I did it. You finished your reading. Don't just close the book. Think, I actually spent 20 minutes learning instead of scrolling. You worked on your business. Don't just shut the laptop. Notice, I moved this forward today. This isn't fake positive thinking. You're identifying the behavior that you want repeated. And that's important because the brain doesn't only learn from the external reward, it also learns from the meaning you repeatedly attach to the behavior. Instead of building the identity, I am trying to become disciplined, you're collecting evidence for, I'm someone who follows through. That distinction may seem tiny, but over hundreds of repetitions, it's not tiny anymore. Don't make your reward more exciting than your habit. Now we need to avoid a trap. Suppose you tell yourself, every time I exercise, I get to watch 2 hours of Netflix. You might successfully get yourself to exercise, but you've also created a very obvious message. Exercise is the price I pay to get Netflix. The workout is the obstacle. Netflix is the reward. That's not necessarily what we want. Instead, choose rewards that fit alongside the behavior. A great playlist while cleaning, a favorite podcast while walking, a really good coffee before your morning writing session, a comfortable environment for reading. The reward should make the experience more attractive, without making the behavior feel like a punishment you have to survive. This is subtle but powerful. You don't want, finally, that's over. You want, that was actually a pretty good experience. Because the second interpretation gives your brain a reason to approach the behavior again. The habit should become easier to start, not harder to finish. Here's where habit science gets surprisingly practical. If the behavior depends on making 10 decisions before you begin, you've created friction. You have to find your shoes, find your headphones, choose a workout, find a place to exercise, decide what time to go, maybe check your phone, maybe answer a message, and now you're tired before you've even started. So don't just make the habit smaller. Make the starting sequence shorter. Put the workout clothes where you can see them. Leave the book on the chair. Keep the guitar outside the case. Put your writing document where it's the first thing you see when you open your computer. Prepare tomorrow's lunch while you're already making dinner. These aren't glamorous tricks. They're environmental engineering. Wendy Wood's research emphasizes that habits are strongly shaped by recurring contexts and environmental cues, which is one reason changing the surroundings can sometimes be more effective than repeatedly trying to summon willpower. And that gives us a useful rule. Don't make the right behavior more admirable. Make it more available. Don't chase the streak. Now there's one popular habit strategy I actually want you to be careful with. The streak. Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 27. It feels great until you miss day 28. And suddenly, the thing that was supposed to help your habit becomes a reason to quit. You think, I broke the streak. Then I'll restart Monday. Then Monday becomes next month. The problem isn't tracking progress. The problem is making perfection the reward. Instead, track something more durable. How quickly do I return? If you miss a workout, the win isn't maintaining a perfect record. The win is returning the next day. If you miss your reading session, you don't need to start over. You just continue. You're training a different behavior. I come back. And that may be more valuable than a perfect streak because life is going to interrupt your habits. Travel will happen. Work will happen. You will get sick. Your schedule will change. You'll have bad days. A habit that only survives perfect conditions isn't a very strong habit. The 7-day experiment. So here's what I want you to try. Pick one good habit, not 5, not your entire life. 1. For the next 7 days, don't judge yourself by how motivated you feel. Instead, redesign the loop. Choose one reliable cue that tells your brain when the behavior begins. Make the first step ridiculously obvious. Give yourself a small, immediate reward that doesn't overpower the habit. Make your progress visible. And after completing the behavior, spend a few seconds noticing the evidence. I did what I said I would do. Then, repeat it in roughly the same context. Don't worry about becoming addicted in 7 days. That's not how habit formation works. Real-world research on habit formation has shown substantial variation between people and behaviors. There isn't a universal number of days after which a habit magically becomes automatic. The goal of this experiment is simply to start teaching your brain, this cue means this behavior. This behavior leads somewhere good, and I do this repeatedly. Over time, those associations can become easier to trigger automatically. What getting addicted to good habits really means. So, getting addicted to good habits doesn't mean making exercise as compulsive as an addiction. It doesn't mean flooding your brain with dopamine. And it definitely doesn't mean turning every healthy behavior into another productivity obsession. It means understanding something much more useful. Your brain is constantly learning what to approach. The phone didn't become interesting because you signed a contract with it. You repeated the behavior. You encountered the cues. You received rewards. The associations strengthened. And eventually, the cue itself could make the behavior feel almost automatic. The same learning machinery can help you build healthier patterns. You can make the book easier to reach. You can make the walk more anticipated. You can make the workout more immediately rewarding. You can make progress visible. You can make returning more important than perfection. And you can stop treating every good behavior like a battle between your strongest intentions and your weakest moments. Because the goal isn't to become someone who can force themselves to do the right thing forever. The goal is to create a life where the right things become increasingly familiar, available, rewarding, and expected. And eventually, something interesting happens. You don't wake up thinking, I need to be disciplined today. You just reach for the book. You put on the shoes. You open the document. You transfer the money. You start. Not because you suddenly became a different person, but because your brain has collected enough evidence that this is simply what happens next. And that may be the healthiest version of addiction there is. Not being controlled by what your brain wants, but deliberately teaching your brain what is worth wanting. If this gave you a genuinely useful way to think about your habits, like the video. It helps more people find practical, research-based ideas like this. And subscribe to Simple Ways of Life only if you found this genuinely valuable and want more videos about psychology, neuroscience, habits, money, and practical ways to make your life work better. And if you want to go deeper into the science behind habit formation, Wendy Wood's Good Habits, Bad Habits is one of the books I'd recommend starting with. Wood's research focuses heavily on how cues, context, rewards, and repetition shape habitual behavior. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep it simple.